on to our November 21st City Council meeting. Glad to see all of you here, even those that aren't required to be here, all three of you. So at this time, we will have our call to order and roll call, please.
Councilmember Gardenis.
Present.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Present.
And Mayor Villegas-Waka.
Here. At this time, if you could please stand by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by our amazing City Clerk's Department, followed by the invocation, and Ken will provide us with the invocation. Ready?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you could please remain standing. Let's bring our minds in. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us this opportunity to meet today. Lord, we're asking you to guide this council, guide them in the decisions that need to be made. Father God, also allow there to not be arguments of discord, but to discuss the items that need to be discussed. Father God, we thank you for allowing us to be here on this evening. Bless those who are here and those who wanted to be here but could not attend. In the most precious name that we know, and that's Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Thank you.
Be our official invocation guy.
I know, right? Okay, at this time, we'd like to turn to our city attorney for a report on our closed session, which was held at 11:30 today.
There are no reportable actions, Madam Mayor.
Very good. I will have presentations and announcements by mayor at the end of the agenda. We'll move now to our scheduled public comments, our Imperial Valley Continuum of Care, formerly known as the Imperial Valley Task Force. And just to kind of set this up a little bit, the council has asked that the Imperial Valley Continuum of Care come to make a presentation to see how the city of El Centro can better partner on the issues surrounding homelessness. I think all council members would agree that this is one of the most vexing issues, just because it has such a tremendous impact on the people that are suffering from being homeless, as well as the impacts on residents in general. So at this time, we're really looking for your strategies and how we can partner with you to move this forward.
Okay. First off, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Isai Nikiwa. I am the HMIS coordinator for the Imperial County. I am from Catholic Charities, but I am.
Everyone know what HMIS stands for? I was about to tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So HMIS stands for Homeless Management Information System.
Perfect.
It's a database that keeps track of the homeless population. So I am the one who trains and assists all agencies who are on HMIS. And I am here today to provide you with an update on HMIS, as well as to ask for help with the point-in-time count, which I will explain later on. So about the HMIS, currently we have 7 agencies in Imperial County who are enrolled into HMIS. Most of those are nonprofit organizations, and there are 681 clients who are homeless and have been inputted into the system, 330 of which are from the city of El Centro. So why is HMIS important? It's important because it helps gather more accurate data for the Imperial County, prevents from having duplicate counts of people who are assisted from various agencies. With this more accurate data, you have a better chance of applying and receiving funds from the state and federal level. And I'd also like to point out to give thank you to the city for having funded the HMIS program with $5,000 last year. And we hope to continue to receive financial support from the city of El Centro. So on with the point-in-time count. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires here on the last 10 days of January for each county throughout the nation to do a homeless count. This year, we are in January of the 26th and the 27th, we are going to do the count for the cities and for Slab City. Last year, or technically this past January, we had a huge success. We had counted 1,070 homeless individuals throughout the county. It's the highest that we've ever seen. And it's not that we had an increase, it's just that we had a more accurate count. Comparing that to the year before, we had 380 homeless individuals. So this comes to show you that making it more aware about the homeless population in our county, coming up with better strategies to perform a count, can lead to better funds.
One question, Mayor. When you talk about Slab City, how do you count, or what classification do you put those people in as far as homeless? Do you count everybody in Slab City as homeless, or is there something that designates or differentiates some of the people that maybe have dwellings out there, even though they might be makeshift or they might be temporary, as opposed to somebody else? How do you count that?
Well, according to HUD's definition, if they do not have running water and electricity, they are considered homeless, and if they don't have a shelter, though many of them consider their encampments as their shelter, but they still don't have electricity or running water.
So that's everybody at Slab City, pretty much.
Almost everyone. There's a few people that have electricity or might have water, but it's very few.
So out of the 1,070, what number represents Slab City?
It was about
81. What number did you have?
The 2017 point count was 1,070?
Yeah,
Oh,
1,070.
I see, and 681 clients have been entered into the HMIS system.
Well, HMIS is separate.
Right,
Well,
right.
it's only for the agencies who are enrolled in
Yes,
it. So
right.
shelters, those are the ones that are, but they are still counted in the point in time count.
Right.
Um,
So we're assuming that the 681 clients that are in the HMIS
database.
database are also included in the point in time count.
Yes,
Okay, so the bigger number is 1,000 what?
1,070.
1,070.
So
I do kind of wonder about the accuracy of that number over 1,000, and getting back to Mr. Jackson's question, because I haven't been in the Slabs area for some time, but I used to work close to there. This is a long time ago. This is 15 years ago or probably longer. But at the time, within the winter time, the winter months, they would get some pretty nice mobile homes that would go out there and park by choice. Does that not count it?
No,
Okay.
there are snowbirds coming up.
Okay. All right.
North.
I'm Martha Ransom with Homeless Women's Services, Catholic Charities, but I've also been with part of the COC for all the years we've had the COC. The point in time count is literally a snapshot. It's never really an accurate forever, this is our number. Next, when we do it this year, we may have higher or lower numbers. We recognize there's a transient group that comes through the slabs. However, most of them the ones we count are considered literally homeless according to the HUD regulations. Now, if you ask a lot of the residents of the slabs, they're really bristle when you say you're homeless.
Correct.
So we are struggling with that with our HUD representatives that talk to us at the federal office. We're considered part of the rural communities, and they have special circumstances that the urban cities do not have. And so part of what we're helping them discern is how best you talk about homeless that don't consider themselves homeless but fit the definition, because there are a lot of people in rural areas that literally are homeless, but they don't consider themselves homeless. We don't work with those people. If they don't want to be worked with, we don't worry about that. Our 680 or 681
from HMIS.
most of them have already have come into services is why they're in the system. So there are other, 400 to 1,000 or whatever it is that don't come in, and they don't get counted in our HMIS. So it's this interesting struggle all the time of how do you do a snapshot point in time and reconcile that with the data that you do get from people who actually come in for services. Our interest is helping the people who come in for service to get them housed. So part of our next report, we should come and tell you how many of these people got housed through our services. That's the next time, that's our next installment.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
think just, I want to kind of follow up, because I want to make sure there's a number out there that differentiates what that number represents out in Slab City. Because when you sit there and you say, well, the point in time count was 1,070. If 300 or 400 people live out in Slab City and they get kind of rounded up in that count, are they really truly homeless? And is our number truly over 1,000 people in Imperial County, or is it more manageable in the 500 to 600 range? And that's kind of just my point is, what is that number in Slab City?
And we don't, I would guess it's closer to what you're saying, that the manageable part is somewhere between 500, 600. But that's, and we won't know until we have enough years of looking at the slabs to be able to really tell you. Last year was our first year to have a very successful slabs count. We're interested in finding out how many we count this year and beginning to do some real analysis of who's being counted, what are the issues, is it really 300 or 400 people tend to be the homeless population, the 300 to 400 who we're finding in the cities and in the community areas where there are buildings and other people. That's the part we're working on first. We'd like to get those people housed, and then we specialize in those. We'd like to have our vets housed first. That's what our goal is, try and find our vets and get them housed first. The vets tend to go out to the slabs. So you have this interesting struggle all the time.
Yeah, I just wondered, because I know the gentleman said that 2016, your point in time count was a little over 300, and then it swelled to over 1,000.
Yeah.
But last year was the first year you really did a concentrated effort in counting the slabs. And so, if there's 300 or 400 people out there, and I've talked to some of those people. You're right, they don't consider themselves homeless. I mean, they have it's funny, they have like a pseudo mayor out there that kind of runs that area, and he doesn't consider himself homeless, and he's got solar panels and has all kinds of things going on. And so a lot of those people may qualify under the definition of HUD of homeless, but they don't maintain that.
But the reason we count them and should care about them is they cost you money. They go to the hospitals. The emergency response teams come out to help them. So while they don't immediately impact you in the community centers, they're impacting the county. They're impacting the community in some way. So that's one of the reasons why you want to know who's out there and how many people are out there. We don't have an immediate solution, but it is something that over time, I would think the county would want to figure out how to address differently, because they're costing you money. If you talk to Pioneers Hospital, they'll tell you how many of those people come into the emergency room. So that's the kind of information that eventually will rise to the top and we'll have a better understanding of. So even though they don't say they're homeless, is there a better way to help them so that they aren't getting sick, that they do have sanitation, that they do have a way to pick up the trash? Because what they're doing now is just, you're lucky you don't have, in my opinion, a lot of diseases that are out there. And maybe we do and we just don't know it. So that's why it's important.
Okay.
For an immediate need, it's not as critical, but over time, you're going to want to know.
But let me ask this question, because obviously the issue of homelessness is not unique to Imperial Valley. It's every city which I travel to, and I also know that it's a very complicated issue, and that there are no easy resolutions to this, and some of the ideal resolutions would require a significant amount of resources, which we don't have. So how do we go about kind of prioritizing what few resources you may have? How does that go in terms of the allocation of those resources? Who gets them first, or what's the first level of remediation?
Well, HUD has been asking us to use a standardized assessment tool that actually rates people's vulnerability. The most vulnerable people should be the first people to get into housing, because the easiest and cheapest solution is to house them. So once you house the experience is across the country that once you house people, you can start to manage the other problems. You can help people get medical care, you can help them figure out how to support the housing, et cetera. You start to eliminate some of the other complicated issues. Something that's reasonably. On top of that, HUD has asked us to go to the most vulnerable people, also start with your vets. And the next group they'd like us to house is the youth, the people that are 18 to 24 that end up being homeless. Of course, we always have our families, and in our continuum, we've housed families first. We're being asked to then go to the next level of who can we house next. Our big push is to try and get our vets housed. First, find them, and then figure out our money is available in the veteran world that we aren't tapping.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Once
that,
we have this
yeah.
assessment tool, we'll be able to prioritize people and get the vulnerable housed.
And that's kind of, I think, what we're wanting to hear is how are we moving forward with that housing first strategy, which as you say, other communities are finding to be, that's the way to at least start the,
Well, we were funded 20% more funding this year than we've had before, and it's been in housing dollars. The state gave us a lot more money this year than they've given us before, and we haven't gotten the contracts yet, but we have a lot of housing, it's rapid rehousing dollars in the funding that's coming to us, $500,000. So we should be able to house a fair number of people that. We're waiting now for the agreements to come in from the state so we can get started.
and have you identified homes or locations for the housing?
We have people that are looking and talking to landlords now.
Okay.
Part of the thing about housing first is that the client has choice. So if we can find 3 landlords that have a few units and will talk to us first, then I would send my applicant to look at the units to say, I want this one, and then we would provide the subsidy to help them get housed and help them stay housed. And our job is to help them keep visiting them, doing home visits and making sure that they're staying successfully housed, that we help them solve the problems that in the past have they decided just to leave their housing. No, let's not leave the housing because you can't get it back again usually.
Right. So then what's being done, you find them a home, what's being done to address either the substance abuse and or the mental health issues that a lot of them struggle with?
Yeah, I mean, another problem. We're trying to have the county engage with us and more actively to really provide those services. That's another barrier that we're trying to address. One of the dilemmas I think the county has is that there are not enough substance abuse treatment services anywhere. I know a lot of the county has, contracts with agencies in San Diego for some of the substance abuse housing. That's a huge rock we have to figure out how to address, and we just don't have enough. That's just another one on our list of things we need to figure out how to fund and gather the partners together to do it. What we're still finding is a lot of entities are working on things individually. We're trying to bring them together in the continuum.
That is precisely why you're here, because we see so many organizations and groups that are just like a one-off, but I'm struggling to hear and identify where's that umbrella organization that's actually going to start working on the problem, which is housing, which is finding folks to help with substance abuse.
And our IVCCC has made inroads that we've never been able to make before. To have 50, 60 agencies come to our meetings every month when we started out with 5 to 10 is phenomenal. This takes that little by little by little, keep at it. And Ken's been really successful in bringing in many, many, many more agencies than we've ever had before because he is dedicated. His whole job is doing that, is connecting people.
And coordinating among all of those agencies so they're not getting in one another's way, they're actually working in concert with one another.
And
Okay.
you know what a hard sell that is. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of work.
So have we engaged like El Centro Regional Medical Center to see if they can leverage services through their partnership with UCSD or anything like that?
We're working on that part because Dr.
Okay.
Edward is very interested.
Yes.
His mission is to really house vets. So
Absolutely.
we're trying to kind of keep funneling the
Okay.
energy to make that happen. Yeah.
One thing you mentioned was about substance abuse and mental health. HMIS actually keeps track of that on the clients. We're not set up yet on HMIS like other cities are, where you can actually link up agencies and their information on what services they provide. But that's why we would like to have more agencies involved on HMIs so that when an agency gets a client in and is notified that they have some sort of mental health issue or substance abuse, they can look up on the system and see what agency can provide that.
So,
But we're not,
So first of all, let me say that I do see and recognize, and based on what you're telling us, I feel that we are making progress. But what I struggle with, I recently got an email from a resident complaining about the homeless issue in El Centro that we all have heard repeatedly. And I really struggled in answering that question because I felt like my responses were the same responses that we've been providing for years, right? So help me respond to that, to this resident with new information, or at least with some hope that we are in fact, finding a solution that would help us with this. So please help me.
I would recommend you send anyone who's interested to come to our continuum of care meetings, which are the second Thursday. More people that come and participate in the discussions, the farther we get down the road of working together and solving, at least, sometimes we can solve an individual's problem. I don't know if you have any other comments. That would be my first suggestion, is they send.
8:30 in the morning?
Yes, 8:30, the second Thursday of every month, 8:30 a.m. at 250 West Orange, which is the Catholic Charities. Have a lot of networking, and we get our meeting done efficiently, and then what's been really exciting is seeing people talk about whatever. I mean, last month we had a vet show up, and he got connected with 2 services. So it's going to be that kind of one by one in some cases, but that's better than nobody doing anything. So for a more generic answer, we struggle this everywhere. It's really hard when an individual is really upset about a homeless person is sleeping in they can call 211, they can come to any of our agencies. We like to talk to people and try and figure out what's the best connection for you. Sometimes somebody just needs food stamps. That right away. Sometimes you need something different. You have some people that choose to live on the street, and then you talk about a mental health issue.
So remind me,
I have a couple
211 is
questions.
for what? I know I heard it before.
211 it's a phone resource. You can call and ask for all variety of services.
That's Orlando.
It's just an information.
Mhm.
Orlando Johnson, okay.
Right.
So I think that Mr. Cardenas had some questions, and then I think Mr. Jackson wanted to talk
Yep.
about reunification services.
Yes.
Just real quick, and again, I do want to, say that I appreciate all the efforts that you made. We congratulate you on a very successful point in time count. But, and I think I've kind of shared this before, but ultimately, what I would like to see is a strategic plan. A strategic plan and how we're going to address it. What I see is that you guys laid down some pretty extensive infrastructure, solid point in time count. You've herded kind of the agencies together. You have the players, the Peggy Prices, the Deborah Owens, those folks that are involved in the coalition or the council. But ultimately, we would like to see a county strategic plan with recommendations. And because it appears that we're kind of doing the heavy lift, our municipality is kind of dealing with the heavy lifting of the homeless issue, especially with 330 homeless people being identified in the city of El Centro, especially from a public safety standpoint, the impact that it has on our hospital, and then as well as fire. And, that's it burdens our municipality services. So, and again, I'm very also encouraged by Ken's leadership and your leadership. So ultimately, if we can, produce that strategic plan, and it appears that now that we have this point in time count, there's funding opportunities that we could pursue. And I don't know if that's at a municipality level, nonprofit level, or a county level, but produce that strategic plan. and say, okay, this is what we need from the municipalities. And then we can go to staff or we can go to council and then say, okay, now let's put some resources, behind it. But, we're looking maybe for some recommendations or overall plan on how we're gonna address this growing problem. I'm being a little selfish. That's what I would like to see.
No, I think that
Yeah.
is well stated. I think that's exactly what all of us are looking for.
And I'm just also, both of our chiefs, our police chief and fire chief they're crying out for help because the number of calls it's producing, the impact that it has on our emergency room, and the fact that sometimes county jails won't even take them because it ties up a police officer 4 hours to get a medic cleared just to get him into the county jail. So, the updates and everything is important, but I guess we're really looking for that strategic plan, or if there's some suggestions you can give us on how we can participate in that process. I mean, I know that our staff has a lot of experience in strategic plan development, but we'll be more than happy to help, to support in those efforts, but we need that strategic plan.
And actually, is the city of El Centro the only one that has a strategic plan? Yeah, you're the only ones that have one. So we should go back in and actually look at what you already have designed, and then I think we'd be happy to come back with what we think are the best suggestions or best practices, and we'll take this to our advisory council, our executive council, and have a wider conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I will, but again, maybe we need that tight timeline too, to say, okay, so if I'm hearing you correct, and I know our staff is already super, super busy, and I don't want to burden them too much more, but I know they have the content expertise to help you with the strategic plan. And I would see it as an investment in terms of, being supportive of our public safety and trying to minimize the burden that they have in dealing with the homeless issue.
Unfortunately, it doesn't go away easily.
So I would go back to our mayor then, and then maybe suggest how she would like to proceed. But I think I'm hearing that we would want to see a strategic plan with recommendations. I just don't know, Mayor, how you think we would fit in that process, or what you would like to see our council or staff.
If I could chime in briefly with some comments. After hearing everything, I have to commend you for what you're doing. Clearly, it needs to be done. I have to echo what my colleagues have said regarding a strategic plan, but my main concern from what has been presented is I understand that your number one priority is housing the homeless population. And we kind of just brushed over the mental health and substance abuse. Yes, we know we don't have all the substance abuse resources that we need, but something that you said really resonated in the fact that if you do secure housing and they leave, they will no longer have that opportunity again. Is that correct?
No, it isn't that they wouldn't have an opportunity again, but in my experience, if you leave your housing, it's hard to secure that housing unit again, whether it's for that person or someone else. So we do all we can, if someone gets into housing, try and keep them there.
So if we're looking at a strategic plan, I mean, clearly it's going to be a case-by-case basis, but from what we've been dealing in the city, there's clearly the elephant in the room that's not being addressed is the clear substance abuse issue. That may go hand in hand with the mental health issue, but frankly, the access to basically opioids is really a problem, and it's allowing these people not to have the motivation to go anywhere because they have a routine, and the access to drugs, because we're so close to the border, is a big issue. And if we just look at the housing issue, it's not really addressing the main problem. So if we are going to have a strategic plan, I would really like to see what the ideas are out there on how we can combat this.
Yeah. One of the really great ones that we use in San Diego program, person who is arrested, judge has the choice of going to jail or going into the treatment program. There's a model that we could bring and show you. But it would mean investing in the kind of. But there are some models of things that we can look at and suggest.
I'm familiar with that program in San Diego, but frankly, the way sentencing is right now for these low-level drug offenses, which they've all become low-level drug offenses at this point,
Yeah, it has
the jail time is a day or two.
AB 109, AB 47, all of those that were early release.
Of course,
We're all
yeah.
being impacted by that. It's
I mean, the-
horrible.
the heroin
All those
epidemic-
drug offenders back on the street dealing drugs and, yeah.
They're only really going after the dealers. If you're just going after the normal users, which is the majority of the homeless population, at least in the city limits that we've seen in the downtown corridor, if they do get picked up with a needle and a usable amount of heroin, they're not going to go to jail. They're going to be on the street. It's a, catch and release type of situation. That's just the nature of the current laws in California. So we really need to look at some way to incentivize this rehabilitation process. Otherwise, we're just going to be chasing our tail.
So it's really important that we have the data, because then that gives us the foundation to understand the resources required to solve the issue, right? So what I'd really like to see is a suggestion to go back to the Imperial Valley Continuum of Care and see if we could establish a very small, and I'm not talking more than 8 to 10 people, who would be willing to dedicate the time to develop a strategic plan for the continuum of care. And I know, because I just called it up on my phone, that the city of Los Angeles has come together and they already have approved strategies, city and county shared strategies. They've got an entire strategic plan put together. All we need to do is take something like that, maybe a couple of other examples, put it on a diet to fit our circumstance, and I think we're good to go. So I'm really thinking that within 60 to 90 days, we could come up with the strategies that we need to say, here's the size of the population we're dealing with, here's the concentration where they're at, here's the strategies that we need to be successful in combating that homelessness issue. So I'm sure that we would have full support from this council and maybe even a volunteer or two from either council or staff to work with you to get that strategic plan developed. So let us know how we can move this forward.
Let us get through the point in time count.
Yes?
So we at least need the 90-day window, not the 60.
Okay.
Get through our January.
Okay, let me ask our city manager, do we have someone on staff who could start pulling strategic plans, homelessness initiative strategic plans from other jurisdictions to at least get us started? Do we have resources available, or?
We can start compiling that information.
So if you don't mind, City of El Centro is going to kind of like jump in.
All right, great.
But again, we don't want to step on any toes, but if you're all right with this, we're moving forward with that strategic plan so that when we're done with the point in time count, we're ready to full steam ahead with that. Okay?
So I'm going to take a different approach because I believe that I want to commend what you guys have done, and I think that everybody's heart's in the right place. Everybody has come together and tried to work on a solution for a problem that's probably not going to go away, and it's probably going to get worse as years go by. The problem that I have is that I hear a lot of, when I talk to certain community members, and some are members of the task force, and some are just people that maybe go from time to time or know people that are part of the task force. When you ask them what's being done, nobody seems to know. Nobody has a clear, defined answer of what the task force does, except get together once a month, have coffee and donuts, and network. The problem is, and I think the problem has always been, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that everybody that's at that table is all fighting for their own funding from some source. And I know back maybe 5-6 years ago, nobody wanted to share their secrets of what they were doing because in their mind it might compromise the ability to get a grant. It might compromise some federal or state funding that might help their organization. I think that on some levels, maybe some of those hurdles have been maybe surpassed. But I think on some levels, it's still very much an underlying issue in regards to the people that are members of this task force. And when you talk to people and they don't have a clearly defined answer of what you're doing, but you've been meeting for years and years and years, and we as electeds get just bombarded with questions every single day or emails or nasty, social media posts about how we aren't doing anything. And we look to this organization that is supposed to be coming up with a plan, and when you talk to people, they don't have a plan. That to me is a problem. And I think that the homeless issue in Imperial County is not totally, but for a large percentage of the issues we have, is a huge hole that we can continue to throw money into every single day and never get any place. And the reason I say that is because we don't have the financial means to build million-dollar facilities and to operate those on a daily basis, nor do your organizations for that matter. So for me, part of a strategic plan has got to have a reunification, this is Cheryl's word, a reunification component as far as getting some of these people back to either where they came from or to get them to an area where they can get services. An individual, we talk about somebody that maybe has a drug or mental issues, mental health issues. We're not equipped for that in Imperial County, nor will we probably ever be equipped for some of these issues. Then why are we continually throwing money at something that we can't fix here when we should be looking at the potential of partnering or something with an agency, maybe in LA or San Diego or San Bernardino, Riverside County, someplace that has these services where, and I know that they don't want us sending our homeless to their areas, but it does these people no good. The homeless people in Imperial County that need those services, we're not helping them by putting them in temporary housing or by providing a hot meal when what they need is they need mental health issue or mental health help, but we can't supply that. But some people maybe feel good or feel, have that warm and fuzzy feeling because we're doing what we can, but we're really not helping that individual. And we're not helping that person get back on their feet. For me, if there's not that component in a strategic plan, we're wasting our time. I mean, everybody's wasting their time because we can't solve every single homeless person's issues here in Imperial County on our own. So if we're not looking at that and we're not sitting there trying to partner with agencies outside this county, or we're not trying to reunify these people with family members, I hear from our chief and from our officers on the street, there's a ton of people that are homeless here because churches have brought them here. Quite honestly, they've taken advantage of them. They've had, these individuals have unfortunately signed over benefits, Social Security, things like that to these churches, and they just kick them out on the street. I mean, there's a criminal element there that has been looked at, and I think we're still looking at. But some of these people have family members from the Midwest or wherever, and they want to go home, but they don't have the means. To me, I think a dollar better spent is to make sure that they have someplace to go, and then purchase them a ticket somehow to get back to that family where they have some structure, they have a home, they have some people that are going to look after them and care for them, rather than continue to feel that we're doing something by providing them a hot meal and maybe a temporary bed in a place that they don't want to be. So that's my issue, is that component has to be there. Otherwise, I can't support a strategic plan that doesn't address that issue. Okay?
I think there's no one size fits all, right? There's a
Right.
lot of reasons why people are homeless. There's a lot of different circumstances. And so I appreciate Mr. Jackson's comments, and Marcella, I know, is taking notes so that when we find a strategic plan or when we start to move this forward, that's going to be an element there. Did you have additional information you want? This is the start of a long conversation that is going to culminate with a lot of really great and exciting things that are going to happen.
One last thing I did want to mention, as co-chair of the Point in Time Count Committee, we would like to ask for help with the city providing 5 additional vehicles for the Point in Time Count on January 26th. And that would be specifically to use to count the homeless in El Centro.
You said 5 additional
5
on top of what we provided last year?
If I may, Madam,
Yes.
because we do have a commitment, Isayan, and I believe you've been communicated by, obviously, Liz Sesenya, who attends our meetings, and then we have Anna from Community Development. So we have 5 vehicles already, from what I understand. Are you asking for an additional 5 or the 5 that we've already
An
committed?
additional 5, because we figured, having learned from last year, we do need more teams to be more effective in counting in the city of El Centro, since it is the largest city of all of Imperial County.
Because I believe that the 5 vehicles that we committed and the individuals that are going to be riding, pretty much that's, I guess, from the city's perspective, those are the resources that we can provide. I know that the county last year did also have some vehicles that were provided, so has outreach been made to them?
I am not aware of that.
So I know that they,
Well, yeah, the DA has, they're going to be providing vehicles for Slap City, but this is in reference to specifically the city of El Centro. Because last year we had to have volunteers provide their own vehicles because we had so many volunteers show up. But this year we made changes to prevent from doing that. So we're creating more teams, and in doing so, we think we were wondering
I
if the
guess we
city
can
can
see what we
provide.
can do. Because we've already made a commitment for.
The 5.
yeah.
So how about if we have this discussion
Yeah.
offline with with the city manager, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay? And maybe there's some other nonprofits that have a spare vehicle that they can help us with.
Remember Jackson has a very nice SUV, right?
Actually, you have a whole fleet of vehicles that
I do have a
could
fleet of vehicles.
maybe provide.
And one
With
other
lights
thing
and sirens and everything.
that the committee had wanted to ask was if city employees can flex their time to participate in the point-in-time count. Since we are going to be doing it from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., could the city employees participate?
Why don't we see if we can come up with a recommendation, and if it's something that our department heads can agree to, we'll announce it at the all-employee appreciation event on December 8th. Okay? So we'll see if we can get some
Okay,
volunteers.
great. Thank you.
Okay? All right,
You guys-
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Marcella, we've got our action plan for what the city of El Centro is going to do, both with regard to the point-in-time count
Yes.
and strategic planning. Awesome. And I did bring home some stuff from LA that I'll get you on that. All righty, thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on then to our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve items 2 through 9, unless somebody wanted to pull something? No? Okay. Okay, consent agenda passes 5-0. Let's move on then to item number 10, which is our discussion on establishing priorities for the 18-19 CDBG funding cycle. And you are not Liz.
I am not Liz. I got asked to take care of this. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. As you're aware, every year when we start our annual action process, we like to come before Council and get priority or input from you on the priorities of what you want to see addressed in the next year's funding cycle. Believe it or not, we're already ready, even though we're just barely starting our 2017-18 year, we're already ready to start the RFP process for the 2018-19 year. So tonight, this one might not be working. We wanted to come before you again, just to get your input on what you would like to see as a priority. We do want to remind you that all activities proposed for the CDBG funding have to meet one of the 3 national goals through the HUD program. First being that it should benefit at least 51% of the low, moderate income persons, or it can aid in the prevention of or elimination of slum or blight, or it can meet another community development need having a particular emergency. It just needs to meet at least one of these national objectives to be considered for funding. Some examples of various activities that are eligible through the CDBG program would be housing activities, public facilities, public infrastructure improvements, public services, and economic development activities. This is kind of an overview of the funding we're anticipating. When we go through our RFP process, HUD recommends that we use the funding level that we have for the current program year to structure our annual action plan on. We won't know for some time what the actual allocation will be that we'll be receiving, but they do recommend we use this year's allocation to base our RFP process on. So we're anticipating for the 2018-19 year, the amount of funding of $463,642, which is actually this year's allocation. That we have eligible, along with that funding, we do have various caps that we have. One of which is the planning administration has a cap of 20% of the funding. For public service activities, we do have a cap of 15%. And as you can see, that comes out with, and it'll leave a balance of about $301,368 for other eligible projects. We do still receive program from the state CDBG program that went before we became entitlement, and we're anticipating about $30,000 to be received for eligible activities. Of that, the same caps apply, the 20% of planning administration, 15% public services, which would leave about $19,500 available for eligible activities. Whenever we're putting this together, there are various activities that are required and some that we would like to recommend for consideration. The first of which is required is the fair housing component. We do have a current contract with Inland Fair Housing, and so as part of the structure of it, we've programmed in $47,250 because that is the amount that is based on their contract. As you can see, in continuing the discussion of the continuum of care, we have programmed in or requesting $5,000 be considered for the HMIS system, and it'd be our contribution to the Catholic Charities for that system. Now, the housing activities, the city did receive that $300,000 home grant, which I had spoken to you about whenever we went through the annual action plan process. The home grant does not pay for certain activities such as lead-based paint abatement, asbestos testing and removal, and off-site improvements. So that we are requesting that you'd consider letting us use some of the funding for the housing activities to supplement the home program. So as we're doing rehabs on houses, we can fund the portions that the home won't pay for through CDBG for eligible clients. And then lastly, we are recommending the full 20% of the grant administration, both through the annual allocation as well as the program income.
Does our fair housing group, did they do a customer survey? Do we know how well their clients think they're performing?
I think the agency does them as an agency do some surveys, but we can follow up.
So is before, and probably sooner rather than later, because if we need to replace them as our fair housing agency, we probably need to know that sooner rather than later. So I think what we would look for as a council is just assurance that they're doing a great job for the money that we give them.
Okay.
Okay?
I believe I think we're about halfway through the current contract with them. Am I correct, Marcella? I think that we're on the year 2 of the 3-year contract. So this is just a summarization of it. The planning administration, you could see the amount available of $98,728. We are recommending using the full amount that we can towards the planning administration. The amount available through the public service, for the public services is $74,046. And when at the end of the day, basically what we're looking for is the direction on the other eligible projects also of $320,868.
You know, I just wanted to, if I may, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to follow up, and sometimes I struggle a little bit finding the actual amount that's available for grant services, and I know that we've dealt with or have provided grant funds for senior nutrition and homeless, or dealing with some of the homeless issues. What portion of that pie is for those types of grants?
For the type of services that we provide, public services, it's a 15% cap. It's based on how much, on the annual allocation, it's 15% of our annual allocation.
Okay.
On the program income, it's 15% of what we have received. in the prior year. So for the 2017-18 year, whatever we receipt in program income, 15% of that can be used towards the program's public services.
Do we have an estimate of what that will be in 1819?
In 1819, the amount we were provided would be 30,000, but it fluctuates. I mean, I think this year we had a much higher amount, but it can go down. It just depends on the payoffs of the loans from this previous CDBG.
But I think Mr.
State program.
Mr. Cardinal is asking the question, and I think the answer is right there.
It's in the report.
Yeah, that's
If
what I
I-
was-
If I may, Councilmember Cardenas, actually in your report, you see, and I think on the slide that's before you is the amounts that are allocated for the nonprofit agencies providing public services. As you can see, we're estimating $74,046, but out of the suggested or required amounts, we're taking out $52,250, leaving us only available $21,796 from the actual allocation that we're getting directly from HUD. For program income, we estimate we're gonna get 30,000 in that particular fiscal year. So the cap, based on, again, this is a requirement of HUD, it's 15%, so we would only be able to allocate up to 4,500.
So in reference to 17, 18, what was the amount that we provided in terms of those nonprofits?
It's actually
I
on your
apologize
staff
if I missed
report,
that.
that's okay. If you look at the, there's an attachment to your report for 2017-18. We provided for public services, $47,250 to Inland Fair Housing, Catholic Charities, their senior nutrition program, $16,133. Catholic Charities, their House of Hope, $5,330, and then for Woman Haven, $6,124 for a total of $74,000 that we allocated.
You want to back out the 52,000.
What?
The fair housing, you want to back that. You're talking about what we're doing for the different agencies?
Right.
Yeah, so back out the fair housing because that's mandated. And then whatever that number is, that 74,000 minus the 47, that's kind of what we had last year.
At 52,250, it's the addition of the two numbers, the fair housing, which is required, and then the HMIS contribution is the 52,000.
Well, it's almost the same as
Okay,
last year.
thank you. That's what I needed. Yeah, thank you very much. That's the number I was trying to, or that's the idea I was trying to wrap my arms around, but, so we're kind of status quo
At this
for 18, 19.
At this point, yes, and just keep in mind that the CDBG program is a program that's being evaluated as possibly being eliminated. So, the allocation could be much less than that, which means that, the distribution could be much less than what, we've been doing.
At this time, these aren't commitments for what's going to be in the annual action plan. We're just looking at direction from council of what kind of programs and activities it is that you'd like to see brought before you in the next RFP process.
Okay, thank you.
With regards to the other eligible activities, one of the projects that the city staff would like to recommend and has to do with the ongoing renovation or updating of the McGee Park playground and hopefully a future soccer field area. The CDBG program is currently funding the renovation of the McGee Park playground and sidewalks and everything. I think we're just getting ready to go into construction on that portion. The city staff is currently applying for funding to continue with the upgrade of the McGee Park playground area and actually continuing on. As you can see on the slide, this is a concept design for the addition of a new soccer field, resurfacing of the basketball courts, some additional lighting, additional fencing, and one of the items that would be included in this upgrade would be the relocation of the bathrooms and the snack bar facility. It's currently over in the area of the splash pad, but to help it flow with the new projects, we're recommending that it be relocated and made available to the people that are going to be using the new soccer field. Unfortunately, the funding for this new proposed project is through the Land Water Conservation Fund. This portion of that project, just the restrooms, is not eligible for funding through that program. It was previously paid for through the same funding source many years ago, And because of that, they will not pay for the relocation of it. So we're looking for funding, trying to find funding just for the relocation of the bathrooms. The rest of the park, we're looking for funding elsewhere, but we're asking for CDBG funding, or to have it be considered for the relocation of the bathroom and restroom facilities.
When did we construct those restroom facilities?
Several years.
Yeah, need to try and research that, because whenever it was brought up to it, it was brought up during the application process, that they were the ones informing us that it had quite some time ago had been paid for through it. I know there were some renovations there. They actually think the playground itself was done through the Roberti Zeeberg grant.
Right, and then didn't we do some renovation with regard to the snack bar or something there, or no?
Not a major, not
Okay,
repairs here and there.
So the estimated project cost for the relocation, or actually the relocation, which would include reconstruction of the bathroom and snack bar facility, it's estimated about $400,000. So it'll actually be a little higher than what we're currently showing available, but we are requesting that it be considered as one of the eligible activities in the upcoming fiscal year of the annual action plan.
Anytime we go to a League of California Cities annual conference, there's somebody there that has the modular restrooms that are available? No? Not going that route again?
Having actually completed one, it was, honestly, I mean, it's the manner in which you put that contract together is very, very challenging. And at the end of the day, you realize that it's almost the same cost to just, remodel, rehab.
Bottom up, okay.
So at this time, if you have any suggestions or questions or information that you'd like to provide for us so that we know, have your input for the continuation of the RFP process, we are looking to, as soon as this council meeting's over, to continue on with the RFP process, but we just want your input.
All right, so we'll start down this way, see if there's any additional comments or questions, Mr. Silva?
So in addition to the McGee Park recommendation, that is the only recommendation that you're providing to us?
Other than the housing activities and, of course.
Right, but out of that category?
Yeah, the other eligible activities.
Right,
yes.
so are there other projects that perhaps we could also weigh benefit and costs that would be, could be made possible out of this funding grant?
Well, staff doesn't have any recommendations, but certainly we are looking to council for any recommendations that you would have.
I'd like staff to see if there's any possibility for us to have, we have the funds there, but we are only being presented one kind of project there. I'd like to see if there's something else that maybe we could weigh the pros and cons like Mr. Silva said.
Yeah, I'm open to seeing some other issues, but I think additionally, did we use funding for, or do we have all the money put aside for operations for the water park, aquatic center?
Unfortunately, this funding cannot be used for operational expenses associated with any recreational or any kind of city facility.
Okay.
And, I just continued, and I know our city has been very supportive of senior nutrition. I'm, just glad to see that it's at least minimum, it's status quo. But I know that senior nutrition is very, very important and something that our city's been supportive of. So hopefully they'll apply and discuss that at the appropriate time.
Well, there definitely is never enough money available for the public service
Exactly.
piece of this, so we're going to have to be creative with what we do. If there are any opportunities to enhance or support the city's commitment to beautification and community enhancement, whether it's through our tree program or graffiti abatement or something else, I would be very encouraged to hear if there's other opportunities along those lines.
Well, because the task force on Measure P for Parks and Recreation met today, and one of the projects that was on the list was the McGee Park. So, Marcela, would be something that was part of the project that we can carve out either out of Measure P or include into Measure P and free up this money for other things?
Yes, yes. As you may recall, we're actually pursuing the grant, but unfortunately, when we discovered that, this original construction of the snack bar and restrooms was done with state money, we couldn't go and ask for additional funds to do this improvement. But we did include it as part of that amount. So yes, we can either do Measure P or, we can include it in here. This is an eligible area. One of the issues too with CDBG is that we have to make sure that we benefit the 51% that you saw there. So we have to look at our city. There's only certain areas within our city too that are eligible for us to be able to spend funds. So we're also, we take that into consideration as we're doing project selection. And just so I can clarify too, when we go out and do the RFP, our city departments also receive this request. So any city department, obviously any eligible agency in the city can submit a request. So we will open it up and you'll see other projects. Sometimes the limited funding is what discourages or what makes it a bit challenging to do projects. So that's why, it's very, very sometimes limited what we get in terms of requests.
So again, I'm going to go back to say that I think if we can come up with some other options that we can consider, maybe particularly someone that is of dire need in the city but maybe outside the scope of Measure P, that still qualifies under one of the three criteria that you indicated before. I think that would be useful for me.
When you say, and let me just wanted to clarify, when you say someone, are you talking a city agency, or are you looking for outside agencies
No,
that have?
in city,
Okay.
city agency.
Could we possibly consider, because one of the things we've identified is the fact that the city doesn't have any indoor recreational facilities west of 8th Street. We now have this new building, then we've potentially talked about what can we do with our new building? Is it possible that we could use CDBG funding to rehab a portion of that building for some kind of an indoor recreation or community room?
Which
or
building is this, sir?
Our new donated
Oh,
building
okay.
on Imperial Avenue.
Well, we can look in, we can research it.
If the funding could be available for that.
I'd also be interested if elimination of blight is one of the topics or one of the criteria that we could fall under, maybe what type of a program could we start? Maybe it's just a one-time program.
Our tree program?
Where we have some funds available.
If it's a new program, then we can consider it.
I mean, we already have the graffiti abatement, we already have the tree program, but I mean, something that
We
maybe,
haven't funded tree program yet.
well, we'd have to see how much that costs.
I know, might be pricey. Okay, well, I love these ideas, so if there's something else we can do, either with the
Let
new
us know.
building or, to supplement our Measure P funding, or better yet, leverage other funding availability, I think that's really what we want to do.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
are we requesting then that they come back maybe, or would the request be that they come back to council with the follow-up items, or how would you?
I think what's going to happen now is we have the 2 public outreach meetings scheduled, right? And then you'll come back to us all in with
all the
what
RFPs.
what everybody has submitted in terms of applications, and that will include city staff weighing in on our recommendations or requests. If we want staff to come back prior to us making final determination, I mean, usually we take 2 meetings to determine how we're ultimately going to award the funding.
Once we conclude the RFP process, we do come back with a summary before we
Right,
start the
before we-
preparation of
right,
the, so you will get a report on
All right.
all activities completed.
Excellent. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, well, do you have enough information?
I believe I do.
Okay, very good, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Okay, so then the next item has to do with the discussion and necessary action regarding our city council committee appointments. I think we shared with you, and thank you, city clerk's office, for providing to us that list.
All right.
Is everyone comfortable with remaining as is, or was there some
You know,
changes that we need to make?
Madam Mayor, I thought I had seen that, it had me on the, as the mayor for, as an alternate for the chamber, but I believe it's,
Yeah, those will change.
Okay,
Those-
yeah.
The ones where it's mayor pro tem and mayor,
right.
those ones will change, but other than that, was there anybody else that wanted to move things around?
I'm-
Then the other thing is, do we agree that all of the task force are current? Community enhancement, yes. City charter task force, I think that's on an as-needed basis. The public safety task force addressing infrastructure.
Yeah, and I would maybe ask Councilmember Jackson to chime in as well, but I think that could be either rolled up or unless the chief sees any value to it.
Well, that's
maybe
kind of
that-
being addressed already under
Right.
the community enhancement.
Yeah,
So
so,
are we okay with disbanding the public safety task force and agreeing that those things are currently being addressed by the community enhancement?
I think we're, yeah. Chief, do you have any input on that?
that's it.
Mr. Cardenas, you're okay with the Friends of the Community Service?
Yes, in fact, I'm gonna be
Excellent.
retrenching that, so.
Awesome. City Manager Appointment Task Force, going to continue with that through the process. The Cannabis Task Force, can we disband that?
We're done.
Yeah, we don't have to do
Done?
anything on that
Okay.
until we readdress it.
All right, so City Clerk, so far you've gotten the disbandment of those two. We've got our working groups, our evaluation panels. Everybody okay to just keep the evaluation panels as is for next term, okay?
Yeah.
Strategic Planning Task Force.
Is our strategic plan due for either a
2018.
revision?
Yes.
It's
It's gonna,
20.
in 2018.
So
Okay, so we need a couple folks.
I would be, let me see. Oh, yeah, yeah. I would make myself available, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Cardenas,
Oh, yeah.
You better call Chuck, see if he's available.
anybody else? I know we've got a lot of time constraints down this way. I'll volunteer with Mr. Cardenas on the Strategic Planning Task Force. Okay, so as is, with the exception of the mayor pro tem, that will change for this year, we are disbanding the Public Safety Task Force, rolling that up under Community Enhancement. We are disbanding the Cannabis Task Force, that one's gone up in smoke, and then for Strategic Planning,
That one I spoke, that was very good.
pretty good, huh? I was seeing if anybody was paying attention. Strategic Planning, Mr. Cardenas and myself.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do we need a motion for that? Okay, that's adopted 5-0. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on then to item number 12. And this really, I was looking to staff for recommendations, because I think you guys do such an amazing job of knowing what's rolling forward on any given day. Personally, if I'm participating in the December 19 meeting, I'll have to do that remotely. So I'll be out of town, not a problem. The city clerk's office just has that down now where we can participate remotely. And then January 2nd, I will not be here, but I would be here on the 3rd if we were going to move. But city staff, I just wanted to start us with the discussion. We'll make that final determination at the December meeting.
If I may just address, so that way it kind of helps us in terms of
Yes.
planning. If needed, we can cancel the meeting of the 19th with the hopes that on December 5th, there's an item coming before you related to the hospital. We're hoping that we can take care of it on the 5th. If there's a need for a meeting regarding that item, we would have to meet before December 17th, correct?
Preferably the 13th, 14th, or 15th. 14th or 15th
So
would be
we'd call a special.
A special meeting for that item.
Very good.
during the day.
Okay.
However, we do need to have a meeting to address a tentative subdivision map that Ms. Villacaña is working on. This is for the Linda Vista project. The Planning Commission is listening to this project, or she's going to be presenting it on December 12th, so the meeting would have to be after this. So if we can maybe, and this can be just the only item you address, and we can consider a noon meeting, perhaps maybe on the 3rd. Norma, would that work? And
do
we
it
just
on the
have this
3rd?
item scheduled?
Yeah.
Yes, January the 3rd. If you're okay with
Well,
that,
we-
then we
I'm
can.
not sure if I'm going to be available.
It could be later than the 3rd.
That week?
That's a Wednesday. 3rd is a Wednesday.
It just,
Yeah.
it has to be done before January the 8th, because I believe that's the deadline for
Okay.
the
Can
extension.
we go ahead and tentatively schedule the 3rd?
And that way we can
If that's
plan.
the only item?
Yes,
And then if there's any other cleanup items that we need, we can have them during
We
the
can
day
do
on
it
the
then.
3rd?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing that forward. We do have an agenda for the financing authority. Where does that fit in?
At the
Ms.
end.
Caldwell?
Adjourn to it?
You can do it after you adjourn city council, or if you prefer to recess into financing authority now, it's at your discretion, wherever.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we recess to the financing authority, hear this item, come back for the council member reports, and then call it a day? How's that? Who's presenting on the financing authority?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
This is the item that you saw on the consent agenda for the city council. You'll recall that on 2 occasions, you have approved a forbearance agreement and the extension of a forbearance agreement, which addresses a technical lack of compliance on the part of the hospital with a bond, a ratio, a bond covenant, but it's a funding ratio. That funding ratio will probably be removed in the upcoming bond issue, and it's a very high one. This extends until December 15th, the existing forbearance agreement. For that reason, acting on the document that will be in front of you, it was for December 19th, but if it can be done on the 5th or any time up to and including the 15th, then it will track with the extension of the forbearance agreement.
Okay. This item's been before us on 2 occasions. I think that we're probably pretty well versed. Are there any questions, though? Okay, let's go ahead and ballot, please. That item passes 5-0. Okay, at this time, we'll go back to city council. There's no business for the successor agency to redevelopment or housing authority. We did have one public speaker slip, but I think that we dealt with the matter prior to the start of the meeting, so we're good with that. So with that, let's go forward with our task force meetings and our reports and member reports. How about if we start with Mr. Silva?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to congratulate Mr. Jackson on that outstanding Veterans Day celebration over at Park. Really good job, Mr. Jackson, in that, and the recognition of our mayors. I know you're always kind of spearhead those events, and we're very grateful for that. And then subsequent to that, I also attended the Veterans Luncheon along with our mayor and Mr. Jackson. Also attended the IBEDC dinner last week. I attended the Lotus Ranch subdivision grand opening on Saturday, and also the Measure P Task Force for Parks and Recreation has prioritized projects, so we're ready to go. I'm not sure if the question was asked whether we kind of hold off until everybody's done and present that as a group, or do we? You want to see those in advance? I kind of
I think if you're ready, we might as well
Bring
bring
'em?
them forward, because then it gives us more time to think about them in total.
Okay.
I
So
think.
what day would you?
Can you do it the first meeting in December? I think we're all here, right? Okay. Because I think the IT and ADA would be available to make their recommendations at that meeting as well, I think.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silva. Mayor Pro Tem?
I attended the wonderful reorganization event that was thrown by Mayor Walker. And it was a very well-attended event. It was great. Yes, it was lots of fun. And then shortly after that, I went to Charlotte, North Carolina with Councilman Cardenas and attended the National League of Cities. Attended several workshops dealing with various issues like the opioid crisis that we're currently having in this country, economic development for small cities, infrastructure development. Basically, just they had multiple workshops where they discussed several issues that tried to show what some of the bigger cities were doing and how it could apply to smaller municipalities, although being there, I learned that we're not so small when compared to a lot of the cities in this country. We're reaching a population close to 50,000 right now, and there are some things that we may apply, and that's discussions that'll be had between the colleagues as to how we could come up with new ideas to apply them. But it was a very informative week, and it was a very busy week.
Excellent. I don't know that we're ever going to allow the two of you to leave the state together again, but maybe. Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, just two items. Obviously the Veterans Walk, which I appreciate the attendance of our mayor and Mr. Silva and Mr. Cardenas. The first Veterans Walk in El Centro, I thought was very well attended. We had about, I think they said about 70, I think it was a little less than that, but it was 50 to 70 people that actually did the walk from the Legion to the park. We had a nice short ceremony at the park, and then we followed that with the Veterans Luncheon that the El Centro Kiwanis Club and all of us sponsored and served. So I thought that was a very nice event. We'll build on that for next year. And also attend the IBDC dinner at the fairgrounds, which was a nice event too. So that was all I had.
All right, Madam Mayor, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into the NLC.
A lot of
40
tears.
yeah,
Mostly
45 resolutions. Wow. 15 of them being brand new.
Oh, my
So I have provided you the resolution committee book, and I also want to, I'll make a copy for our city manager as well. But 45 of them. So very interesting. I just want to highlight two of them. One is the NLC is, well, we were successful in adopting a resolution in the areas of community engagement or community support, and that is along with some of the comments that Councilmember Garcia mentioned regarding the opioid epidemic, and that's the local regulation of sobriety homes. Right now, if you look at some of the sobriety homes that are in the municipality, there's not a lot of oversight. There's not a lot of protection, consumer protection, and ADA protection. So National League of Cities adopted a resolution to share with the federal government that says that, or supporting local authority to certify and regulate residential recovery facilities, AKA sober living homes. So very interesting resolution, and I'm hoping that our council is unanimous in supporting local authority to certify and regulate sobriety living homes. And it goes hand in hand with the opioid epidemic, because a lot of sobriety homes are popping up. And if you look at them, most of them are not compliant with ADA. There's very little protection for consumers and surrounding residents. And it's just a resolution that supports the legitimate and well-run sober living homes that can be both good neighbors and effective programs for struggling addicts. So I was very informative, and I'm glad that they did pass their resolution. The other one that I want to highlight is that we are spot on as a municipality when it comes to preserving our local authority when it comes to broadband infrastructure. So the NLC adopted a resolution urging the federal government to support municipalities' authority to regulate the installation of broadband networks, and that local municipalities do not, that power or an authority be not taken away from them. So again, 45 of them, pretty much unanimous among the cities that were represented. So again, very fortunate to serve as your delegate there. But very good stuff that the NLC is working on. And then probably the last thing, well, participated today with our mayor, and she helped bag up some turkeys. I think we probably bagged up about anywhere 50 to 60 turkeys with Senator Ben Wessel. I was already having back problems, but our mayor was getting with it. So thank you for being part
Well, my
of
gym is now closed, so I'm looking for other opportunities.
Yeah.
So,
And then
unfortunately.
the last thing, I want to thank Norma Villacana and her team on that Plank Road grant.
That is so awesome.
I mean, I was, being able to participate in that focus group, and the fact that it wasn't really a neighborhood that was struggling or that's a sub-economic or, underserved community, but yet they saw the merit and the importance of that park, and you guys hit it out of the park, Norma, your entire team. And so very excited about that grant, and kudos to you and your team, and appreciate the talent that you guys have there. So congratulations to you guys. And on that, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Stay out of trouble, don't eat too much turkey. And thank you again for all the things that you guys do.
I wanted to let the department heads know, we read every page of your monthly report, so we very much appreciate all the information that's provided to us. This is great. It really helps us to remain informed about everybody's activities and to be responsive when we get questions from our constituents. Every year I seem to have a different harangue. I mean, for a lot of years it was AT&T downtown. My new harangue, how many of you have been under the Dogwood overpass?
Oh, yeah.
On Interstate 8? I am having an absolute come apart with the way that signage has turned out. And I've already talked with Abraham, I've talked with Mark Boz at ICTC.
Wait, what signage?
Mark has been
There's no signage here.
Okay, Mark has been in touch with Caltrans. Remember, you may not remember, but when staff presented to us the renderings of what the signage was gonna look like, the big beautiful sun and the ocotillos and all of that, right? It was beautiful. Turns out that we paid for it, right? $500,000 for the city of El Centro to pay for its own signage. Well, I kept thinking, looking at the renderings and all of that it was gonna look like, just like the stuff that we see on Interstate 10, the standalone signage. Well, no, because if you look at it, there are two huge signs already affixed to the bridges on both sides. We've got what I'll call the Amber Alert electric sign, and then we've got the green and white sign that come up so far that it obscures whole big sections of our decorative signage. So it really detracts from the whole beauty of what's been installed. So I've asked Abraham if maybe the second meeting in January to come back with a, how did that happen? What can we do? Mark Baza suggested that at some point in time we ask Caltrans to move the signage that's there, not our signage, leave the decorative signage because that's a big beautiful bridge with the lights and everything. But can we move the other signage to maybe Imperial when we finally get that overpass? Who knows? I just know that disappointed probably doesn't even come close because I guess I had thoughts that was going to be such an attractive gateway and entrance to the valley, and so to see how it turned out is just really disappointing. So, boy, that's a Debbie Downer, but anyway, we're going to get a report on that. I did ask Central Union High School District Superintendent to come back to us and let us know how they're doing with their attendance. Remember Mr. Preciado had come and done a presentation to us on how they're doing with that attendance, enhanced attendance. And also talk about their buildings, how we can better partner with workforce development and community service opportunities. And I was interviewed today, and I don't know if Frank, did they talk with you too about Fifth and Main? And so I drove down there just before coming to the meeting today, and there is just a whole host of new graffiti. It just looks horrible right there on the south side of Main Street. So what they wanted to know is what is the city doing with regard to downtown. So we talked about the enhanced lighting, the security guard, the fact that we're going to have another walk through downtown, that we unfroze the positions for the police department, but it's going to take some time in a village to get that addressed, I think. In terms of activities, let's see. Oh yeah, council reorg. I went up to a SCAG economic summit. That was pretty good. All of the American Legion things were fun. That was very well put together.
And I don't know if you saw it, but Tracy's been sending it out that it got published in the California Legionnaire.
Oh,
So
awesome.
they did a story on it, and it's in the Legionnaire that goes to all the American Legions in California. Yeah.
That's really cool. Let's see, Community Enhancement Task Force, we met on the 15th, so you'll be getting the minutes from that. A lot of great things happening again with our task force. The MOU signing with the Mexican consul, very nice event. Staff, thank you for being there. talk about dedication. So Gustavo, everybody knows Gustavo, our favorite employee from the Adult Center, right? He was there, helping out. He was getting married the next day. Wow. So, I mean, talk about commitment. So I thought that was really great. So anyway, with that, I will say happy Thanksgiving to all of you. It's great to be here. Enjoy the rest of your week and your days off. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.